So tell me about yourself.
My name is Manpreet Singh Virk. I'm a spoken word artist, performer, and student at Cal State East Bay.
Where were you born and raised, or who raised you?
I was born in Turlock, California, and when I was about 2 years old, I moved to Hayward with both of my parents and all of my siblings. From then on, I lived on A Street for the next 12 or so years, and I basically stayed in Hayward for the rest of my life. I went to Longwood Elementary School, then I went to Cho Middle School, Mount Eden High School, and Hayward High School. I was in between all the schools in Hayward. My mom raised me when I was about 4 or 5 years old. My dad started leaving the picture more because he became a trucker, so he would only be home maybe a few days every other month, and for those few days he would just be sleeping. So my mom raised me. She would take me to school, she would feed me, clothe me, give me everything I basically needed and wanted as a kid. And when I started playing soccer, she was the one to take me to my practices. So my mom was literally there for me for everything. I would consider her my dad and my mom. I actually have a poem I wanted to read about that. We kicked my father out when I was 12. My mom was forced to marry when she was only 16 years old. She chose the poor man over the rich one, never thought he would do her so wrong. We kicked my father out when I was 12. His words ringing repeatedly in my mind, they are not my kids, when he was the one who cheated, not once or twice, but many times, raped a girl half his age and called it a relationship. A divorce and 4 kids later, still, my mother was forced to live with him. My father took umrah, yet he supported a rapist, paid his lawyer 20 grand to defend him, picked him up from prison on his release date. We kicked my father out when I was 12, his words ringing repeatedly in my mind, she is a prostitute, when my mother was working 3 jobs to make ends meet, when my mother was the true mastermind behind the family's $200,000 a year business. He went bankrupt anyway. We kicked my father out when I was 12, his words ringing repeatedly in my mind, Manu, just drop the case, we know you're lying, when his brother was the one who raped me. We kicked my father out when I was 12. My mother remarried when I was 15. The only father I have had is the one since then. And I call it Tell Me About Your Father. So when I turned 15, my mom remarried, and after that, basically my stepdad and my mom raised me, and they still to this day live with me, and we all live together as a family.
Thank you. Where did your family move from, and why did your parents move to America?
So my grandparents are from Pakistan. My mom is from Haryana, my dad is from Punjab, and my stepdad is also from Punjab. So when I ask my grandpa, I say, where are we from? Where in Pakistan are we from? And he says, in the saddest voice, it was all India during my time. So technically I'm from India, but now because of the partition, I can't call Pakistan India anymore. So my parents are from Pakistan. That's where it all starts. My mom came here when she was 8 or 9 years old because all of the family started moving here to America, and this was in June of 1984 when they started packing their bags to leave. And that was actually the same time that the anti-Sikh riots were happening in India. So originally my mom moved to America because her dad was paralyzed and he could not make a living in India anymore. So they decided that it would be good to start new somewhere else. So that's why they applied and got sponsored and approved. But they were lucky when they did get approved because during the same time there was genocide happening against the Sikhs. So they literally escaped that right before it happened. So that's why they came to America. And then when my mom got married when she was 16 is when she applied for my dad's paperwork. And that's how he ended up coming to America.
Okay, thank you. How do you identify and what languages do you speak?
So I identify as a Punjabi man. Depending on the environment I'm in, sometimes I say I'm Khalistani. I'm queer, I'm transgender, and I'm iffy about identifying as American because of America's history, but I always make known that I am living on Ohlone land. That's what's really important to me, and I can't say I'm Ohlone, even though I live on Ohlone land. So it's hard for me to identify with the land that I currently live on. I speak English, I speak Punjabi, I can write in Punjabi, but not as well, I can't really speak it as well as I write it, but I can understand it, and I can also read and write in Spanish. That's about it for languages.
Thank you. Next, describe how your family was like growing up and who did you grow up with?
So I basically grew up with my 3 siblings, and I feel like I kind of covered this in question 1, but the dynamic was always like a matriarchy. My mom was the center because she took care of all of us, and we relied on her for everything. She taught us everything, including how to be independent. So even though my stepdad came into the picture, I want to say my mom raised me because my stepdad's always working too. As for my siblings, I always had them in the picture. They've grown up with me. To this day, I live with them.
Given that, did you face any challenges in your community?
I did face a lot of challenges in my community growing up. There's another poem I would like to read about that, actually. My brown peoples will never understand what it is like to destroy ties with Punjab. When you cut ties with your own family, stop showing up to brown gatherings, answer Punjabi with English, everything becomes a blur. Nothing truly feels like home because home never really existed. And I call it, I lost my culture after my dad's brother raped me. So growing up, I had a huge community. I had a family. And after I came out about my rape, I lost all of that. I was basically cut off my culture because my mom cut ties with every single family member. The Gurdwara that we attended believed rumors about my mom and about her kids, about us. So they didn't support her. They didn't support us. When this happened, they took my dad's side. So I had a lot of hatred towards my own community growing up because they were so against survivors of rape that they never created a safe space for us in the community. So people who step forward about that would be ostracized, or they wouldn't be respected. And so to avoid all of that, my mom basically cut ties with everybody. And when she did, we stopped speaking our language at home, because we used it a lot to communicate with our elders and with our community members and our cousins, and we stopped doing that. So if my community was more supportive, it would have been better. But ever since I've come out about my rape, and to this day, because of the things I talk about, I continue to face backlash by my community, and they will say, well, you're not brown enough, you're not sick enough, prove that you're sick. You're queer, that's against Sikhi. You're this, that's against that. They're always trying to pinpoint or pick at something about me so that they can exclude me and other me. So, yeah.
All of that ties into your identity. So what is your coming out story, and how did your parents react?
My coming out story was an interesting one. So I was about 7 or 8 years old when I knew that I was queer and trans. I just didn't have the language to understand what that was. But I was about 8 years old and I saw a shooting star. And what I wished for was, I wished that I was a boy. So, I mean, if you're a little kid and you have a million things to wish for, if that's what you wish for, that's saying something, you know? And in elementary school is when I had my first crushes on boys and girls. So I didn't really understand what I was, but I would always ignore it until I turned about 12 years old, when my mom found out that I had a crush on one of the girls in my soccer team, and she locked me in a room with her. She beat me. She told me I was gonna go to hell, that I was a sin, that I was a curse. Things that I've never heard before, things I've never heard her say before, she said to me that day, and I was terrified. And so it wasn't until I was about 15 when I came out again to her, and when I came out to her, I came out to her as bisexual. So she had hope that I would basically change, or I would marry a man. That's what her hope was. So she acknowledged it, but she didn't like that I would always date women all the time. She would know about my girlfriends at that time, and she was really against it. She would have arguments with me every single day. Every time she talked to me, she would argue with me, and that went on for years, 3 years, 4 years. I lost count of how many years, until finally one day, when we were arguing, we talked about it, and something just registered in my mom's head, and she understood that being queer wasn't a sin. And from that moment forward, she began to really support me and understand where I was coming from. And a year after that, I think I was about 20 and a half, I came out to her as trans, and she supported me. She was washing dishes, and I told her, and then the first thing she said was, do you want me to call up your doctor so you can like start transitioning? She just wanted to know what to say and what to do. But at that moment, that's what I needed to hear, is that she was on board with me. And so my stepdad was a little surprised about the transitioning, but he was supportive about it too. And my siblings were pretty actually supportive about it too. They were kind of shocked because they were like, I can't believe it's my sibling who's queer. But they basically got over that, and they've all been really supportive ever since.
That's amazing, having that support. So what is your major, and why did you choose your major?
My major is ethnic studies, genders and sexualities in communities of color. I chose this major because I saw it and I was like, that's me, right? Because I'm a queer person in a community of color, this applies to me. I wanted to learn more about myself, and I wanted to learn more about people like me because I always felt like I was alone. And it was through this department and through this major that I found community, and I found a safe space, and I found basically I have access to jobs that don't threaten my existence, because that's what was giving me a hard time, was having to change jobs because people were either racist or transphobic. So I would go from job to job, looking for a place where I didn't feel like I was gonna die if I clocked in. Then I actually have a poem that I want to share about that. Dear boy, dead boy, where will I go? Not to the Indians who slaughtered Sikhs, not to the British who criminalized queers, not to the Westerners who see me as less because of my brownness, not to Punjab where I am awarded due to the whiteness of my skin, not to Pakistan where my family is from. Obama made sure he got rid of that one. Dear boy, dead boy, where will I go? I am out of breath from running. Even I do not know how blessed it must feel to fit in. And I call it, only the oppressors have safe spaces.
Thank you for sharing that poem. So when did you publish, and what is your book about that you read from, that you've been reading from?
So this book is called Singh is Queer, and I published it last year, so I published it April 20th, 2018. The cover is important because I was trying to basically make a political statement with my title and my cover. So the feather represents like being able to basically write, like kind of like femininity, that's what it kind of represents. And then the satchel represents masculinity because it's what keeps weapons safe. And so like the feather is my weapon, and this is what I use to dismantle the patriarchy and fight against the war that I'm currently in. And it's called Singh is Queer because a lot of people think that Singhs can't be queer, and I basically did it to piss people off because Singhs have to be this like super dominant, masculine, patriarchal type of man, and that's all thanks to colonialism, because this is not how Singhs used to be. Singhs used to be anything really, but colonialism changed that. When the British colonized India, they basically infiltrated our culture and our religion and the way we practice things, and they also erased queer identities because LGBTQ plus identities existed in India for over 4,000 years. So I was basically trying to bring that back by saying, yes, Singh is queer. I've always been queer. And even though there's not a lot of literature out there documenting any queer existence, well, here's one right here. So that's what I wanted to basically do. I wanted to document queer Sikh existence and not have people erase me. So that was one of the biggest ways to do it, was to title my book, Singh is Queer.
That's an amazing message. So what do you plan on doing after you graduate?
After I graduate, I'm going to continue to work on books. I'm currently working on a book called Singh is Decolonizing. And I'm also working on a mixtape. It's like a political mixtape talking about police brutality, racism, culture, Zionism, anything really that affects me in my daily life. So I call that one Solidarity, and it's in the works. I'm still writing that. So I'm hoping that that's all I do for the rest of my life. I just want to write and create and work for a nonprofit, and then eventually start my own because I really want, I want to use the arts to heal people, and I feel like the arts are a great way to connect with people on a level that other things can't. So maybe one day I'll have my own spoken word studio, and for kids, for K through 12 kids to come and just like write and read poetry, and talk about things that people don't really talk about.
So what advice would you give to other writers?
Start now. Start right now. And be honest, you know? Be honest. And I think a lot of people get so wrapped up in trying to appeal to the audience that they forget to write for themselves. So always write for yourself, and don't be afraid to speak your truth, even when people want to invalidate you and your truth. Because once it's out there, nobody can take that away. Nobody can erase you, and nobody can erase your experience. So, yeah, start writing now and share your writing and make other people write. And when you do write about random things. Write about the bird outside, write about how you feel. Just discipline yourself so that you're writing all the time. Yeah.
Thank you for answering those questions so honestly.
And thank you for watching. I appreciate every single one of you.